A pleasure to me all at last. And now that I've covered Gran Turismo 5 and 6, as well as Sport for the most part, I figured it's only appropriate that we summarize everything up to the very point in which that the most recent entries of Gran Turismo have been released. Starting off in March 2022, the highly anticipated and long-awaited sequel to Gran Turismo 6, a good 9 years of hiatus, with Gran Turismo Sport basically being put in as a way to prevent any sort of impatience or preoccupation in mind. Gran Turismo 7 came along and not only managed to bring back the large track variety, but also the large car variety. They were able to get along some of the old stuff that we saw in 6 in Sport, but also reintroduce the likes of the classics, as well as the Vision series, and plenty of others. Considering how many years had passed since Part 6 came out, there were tons of new cars in which that they went ahead and put together. Some new Porsches, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Chevrolets, Fords, Buicks, etc. So you could say that 7 was more than just hell-bent on creating the largest variety of cars imaginable. Because on top of all that we have covered in the Gran Turismo lineage that we've gotten thus far, ever since 5 came out in 2010, a good 12 years later, 7 might have done some of the biggest world building possible. And I kid you not, I've probably spent much more time than I would have expected on this. A good 30 hours I managed to spend on the game entirely, which is a lot for just a singular playthrough. And while Gran Turismo 6 had technically gotten more replay value for what it is, with lots of variety to pick up in track and cars from the marketplace entirely, there was also a lot of the extras which sold Gran Turismo 6 on my behalf, tenfold. But what does 7 have to offer? Well, it's actually a bit different than what you might expect. There's a cafe, for instance, where special tasks and challenges are set upon us in order to unlock very specific components. Some tracks, cars, and even the garage and multiplayer modes are all unlocked, believe it or not, after you play through some of the missions in particular that the cafe offers. The challenges in particular do range from anything. You could probably knock down a specific amount of cones on a certain route, or make clean overtakes on a good amount of drivers, AI or real multiplayer personnel. And the challenges themselves, they can in fact rack up depending on how difficult you want them to be. But no matter the outcome, the prizes do basically come along, whether it's in-game currency or tracks, cars, or many other things. So the cafe technically is a big hotspot in terms of whatever missions you might need to do, apart from all the regular stuff that's in mind. Traveling to the different countries around the world to go and race onto their tracks, from America to Canada to Germany to Japan to India, Australia, and many others. So I will say that Gran Turismo 7 is probably the largest out of all of the bunch, and it really all works up to the cover, which does consist of a 2020 Porsche and a 2022 Mazda. Red and blue coming together for a unique title card. So it sure is a unique piece to look at. A feast for the eyes, much like the game itself. But what about everything else? Well, like I said, they brought along the Vision Gran Turismo lineage as well as the classics back in order, while Sport mostly left them out, which was kind of a shame. But I will say that Vision Gran Turismo probably is even bigger in this instance. We have a lot of the same old stuff. There was the Mercedes, there was Mazda, there was Porsche, there was the Chaparral, of course. But then we definitely got to get into the likes of the good old SRT Tomahawk trio. The Tomahawk X especially is the fastest car that you can get. Also the most powerful. With over 2,500 horsepower, you know, that's even more powerful than most average locomotives of the 1970s. But don't get me wrong, there's certainly going to be other cars out there in the future in which that'll have way more horsepower and could probably project to even faster speeds than one might realize. Ever heard of the Devil 16? That's probably going to be one thing that'll hit the books for sure, in history or whatnot. But other than that, with 30 hours of gameplay that I put together, and I've collected at least 200 cars, which is basically just a small fraction of the entire inventory stock that the game itself showcases. It really does prove to us that the more variety that we get, the more likely we are to find some good contenders in the field. So I'd say that 7 is probably as good as what 6 has to offer, but there's not exactly that many in terms of extras that it could have offered. It doesn't really contain the sort of unique feels of the Moon or Ayrton Senna's life before his death. So we can't exactly give that much of a score to this one as opposed to what 6 had gotten. So because of everything that I've addressed to this one, and I guess one other thing does have to be mentioned here, this game is also compatible with PlayStation Virtual Reality 2, or PSVR 2 for short. Virtual reality in Gran Turismo. That is quite a way to amp up the realism here. It's one thing where the real driving simulator is always made possible thanks to the usage of a controller, but now we have virtual reality being implanted in the series? Where has that been all this time? I mean, it's true. Virtual reality had trailed off at some point because of how much of a failure it was shown to be. Thanks, Nintendo. But you know what? This was more than a grandiose idea to put together. For virtual reality to come together with PlayStation, and more importantly, with a real driving simulator, talk about a perfect match. Somewhat belated, but better late than never, right? Also, didn't you know that there was a demo that came out a few months ago? My first Gran Turismo came out in December 2024. It's basically just a demo for 7. I don't even know if that's necessary. Like, could they have just released the demo right alongside the actual game? Could they just have made it as, you know, the demo to the game itself? Like, why would they release it 2.5 years later? I don't get it. That's as most recent as we can possibly go here. So, with Part 7, though, I've said tons of stuff about it. There's plenty of great models out there that I've chosen, even the De Tomaso Pantera. And I will also point out that with the cafe, with the garage, with the multiplayer function, and with the many other capabilities that this game pulls together compared to the others so far, I get the feeling 7 does come rather close to what Part 6 has to offer, even though some drawbacks are there. They could have included some extras in here, and that would have really made it even better than 6. But since it's not really the case, I'll just simply stick to a good 9.0 out of 10.1. It's almost perfect for what it is. They could have done a little bit more with it, give it more effort, then maybe it could have actually gotten to where we would have wanted it to be. Now, on top of that, though, the fact that we have a demo that came out 2.5 years later, is this really supposed to be a way to pay for what Gran Turismo 8 could bring us? I wonder when that's coming around. Who knows? PlayStation 6 might have this title, or someone else. I guess we won't know that for sure. Anyways, though, that's all I got to say about all the Gran Turismo games, with parts 5, 6, and 7, along with Sport and my first Gran Turismo. There's been a lot of stuff here that I've talked about lately, and I get the feeling you're probably going to want me to do other stuff just as well. So I'll be back later, and I'll have some different content in video games that are totally awesome. And otherwise, I'll see you guys then.